All right, Brian, you ready to play curveballs?
Always ready to play curveball. Let's go.
What does having balls mean to you? Has the definition changed?
As you grow up and everything, it changes, right? When you're a young teenager and college kid, having balls means something totally different now than it did then, right? Having balls then meant you were a tough guy, you did this, you didn't care, kind of the I don't care mentality. Now I think having balls means standing up for your family, standing up for your loved ones, standing up for what's right, being a good person, and I think doing what's right is having balls. And I think that's the best way to answer that question.
Yeah, I'd agree. If I had to answer it, I'd say that you put your personal interests aside and usually make the right decision as opposed to what's going to give you that maybe self-gratification in the moment.
In today's cancel culture, athletes' private lives are now fair game for the public. Does that change the way you conduct yourselves in private?
Like I'm fortunate at this point in time that like I've given certain things thought, and it's even as simple as like when we used to sleep with a girl and we'd talk about it amongst the guys, we used to call them kills, and well it was more of like a joke thing where it was like I look at it now and it's like, oh God, that's definitely a word, like I shouldn't associate that with that, and I'm quite frank, I'm a little bit grossed out by the way that I used to just let it fly. But I think that it's good that that quote unquote cancel culture of people trying to keep people accountable have made me aware of it. It's made me think about things I say far more, and ultimately I think it's going to benefit society in the long run. And if a dude's going to say, oh, you're fucking soft for saying that, I'll say, okay, well, why don't we fucking line up a brawl in the back alley? We can fight it out, and then we go for a couple pints after, and we can let it be at that, right? Because it's like, if you want to associate this like tough masculinity to it in order to putting your heels in the ground, I think that most people, if they just genuinely gave it some thought, it's just like, I think that's something that I can live without, is saying that word, given the fact that a lot of people are upset by it. It does come off as misogynistic, that I don't, respect women, and I'm in full agreement with it. Okay, here we go. I would like this one in return, actually. Walk us through your skincare routine.
My skincare routine. It's really crazy. So I just use what's in the shower that my wife has purchased. Nothing crazy. I don't put any cream on in the morning or after the shower. That's it. I run every day without my shirt on, so I'm probably getting exposed to the sun in ways that are pretty horrific. A little bit of sunscreen here and there, but nothing crazy. Nothing out of the ordinary. You?
All natural, baby. All natural.
Yeah, all natural.
I wasn't good about it, or as good about it when I was playing. I used to use some products, but obviously as you get older, you start learning about things. Sean Avery's another guy who I talked to about it, who's obviously got a big skincare routine. He's into fashion, and I kind of pick his brain a little bit. But yeah, you realize how important it is to wash on a day-to-day basis, moisturize. I put toner on, and I guess the term metrosexual will get thrown out there, but man, you get one face, and that's the first thing that people see when they meet you. And I think it's important to take care of it and spend time into it. I don't know. That's just where I'm at. And I know some people who are watching who are male might be like, oh, that's weird. No, I like, I want to have a nice young face for as long as I can.
You once had a sexual partner describe your dick in detail on an Arizona radio station.
Yeah, I thought everything was fine. And the next morning, and it was set up by the radio station. So the next morning at 8 a.m., my phone's blowing up, and it's the radio station calling me for a rebuttal. We're in a playoff chase. We're playing the Chicago Blackhawks to like try to get in the playoffs in a chase to win the division. And I'm getting a phone call about my small hammer, and this is being talked about on a local radio station in Phoenix, Arizona. So
Did any of the opponents talk to you about it? Like break your chops?
Oh, I don't care. I tell everybody I'm a grower, not a shower, and it was funny, and I turned it into content. So who gives a fuck, you know?
There you go. You gotta have a sense of humor with it.
We are who we are, so I'm not afraid to admit it. God, they're bringing out all the stops with these curveballs. Jesus Christ.
Your curveballs are crazy.
They're bringing up some. I have a girlfriend now. I might be single.
Like, how do you like being a dad?
What were your biggest insecurities growing up? Do you still have them?
Growing up, I was very little. Not that I'm saying I'm big now, but I was very short, probably until like 10th grade. But I was always very fast, and you know, I excelled in a lot of. I actually played hockey too. I excelled in a lot of sports, mainly in soccer. So I think that was probably my main insecurity there, was that I was just small and didn't feel like I was getting a fair shot because of that.
So if like someone at that age, because you were trying to do all these other things in order to stand out, if they would have referenced maybe small man syndrome, as somebody who was shorter at the time, would you have been insulted by that? And would you still?
I don't know if I would have been insulted by it, because I think at that age, you don't really understand the context of that when you're, 13, 14 years old. But I was just like, I don't get it. I'm playing really well. I'm fast. I'm scoring. I'm doing this, and I'm not getting that shot because the kids were just bigger and stronger. So that's why I think still to this day is why I'm training so hard. Like, there's still probably that, you could, like you said, that PTSD in a way just stuck in my head that good enough. And I think that, and I use that now in a positive way. Got a question for you, Chance.
My turn for an answer.
You're a pretty open book, especially on social media. Has that helped or hurt you in your career?
I would say it definitely opens yourself up for vulnerability, and we just got into that, where I don't think I've ever had an issue doing it from a personal perspective. I give everyone a fair, open look at my life to a certain degree, but it's not all as it seems, and I deal with the same struggles, or maybe even more than a normal person. And I would hope that talking about those things and being more open about whether they're problems or successes helps people either reach those successes or deal with those hardships. So I'd say it's been very successful, and I have no regrets about being an open book since I started my Twitter way back when.
You joke about being a retired fourth line plug. Did you have any insecurities about retiring? If so, what were they?
I don't know if I was insecure. I was definitely a little scared, because you go from doing one thing your whole life, and mind you, I was very focused on hockey even when I was going to school. So I didn't have an education, and fortunate enough for the social media, I had some form of direction. But yeah, it was definitely unsettling, and I knew that I wanted to achieve more than just what I was getting into, which was the Coyotes gig right after I retired. But yeah, I mean, yeah, thinking about the future, not knowing what's going to happen coming out of something that you've done your whole life. And I mean, PTSD is a term that you normally hear when you're, about people coming back from war or something. But when you're being stripped of your livelihood, and mind you, it was a case of where my body was breaking down, and I just genuinely wasn't good enough or physically fit enough to keep up. So it was, you're like I said, you're getting stripped of that livelihood, and you have to go into a different world that you don't know. So I wouldn't say insecure was the word, but definitely fearful. What has your wife taught you about your masculinity?
She stripped it. No, I'm just kidding. She has definitely taught me a lot about it's okay to continue to be emotional and vulnerable as a guy. We had 2 of our children through IVF, and for the longest time, I didn't talk about it to any of my friends or talk about it to anybody in general. I was just like, oh, we're not getting pregnant, or then we got pregnant. Yeah, we got pregnant, but didn't mention the struggle we went through, the IVF process we went through. So with her being vulnerable about it, and her being upfront about it from a women's perspective, allowed me from a man's perspective to be like, who gives a shit? Like, we have 2 beautiful boys now. I should talk about it and help other guys, and I don't need to be insecure about that.
Spittin' Chicklets has gotten athletes who wouldn't normally do interviews to really open up. How do you connect with guys like that?
We're well aware that we're a players podcast and that we are able to get more out of guys than maybe traditional media. And I think that that is what benefits us as a whole. And it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, and same with me, that you know, guys open up and are a little bit more vulnerable, and then all of a sudden these people are hearing about this guy who made millions and they idolized, but meanwhile behind the scenes their life was maybe a train wreck, and then they figured it out. So I think in that case it does bring a lot of people hope, because now they understand that people from all walks of life are going exactly what they are going through. So I'm very, very grateful that not only are we able to kind of show these guys' personalities off and have these conversations, but I mean, I mentioned how I was nervous retiring and I didn't really know what my purpose was going to be moving forward. And I mean, within a year of retiring, I found it, and I'm very happy.
Good for you.
Thanks.
Great.
Oh, your turn. I got in my feelings there a little too hard, so it's time for your curveball.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
What's the most surprising lesson you've learned from one of your HPL training community?
So I started a new company called High Performance Lifestyle Training. We go out and get the best of the best in every field. So, for instance, we had David Goggins as our first guest. And what we do is we put like-minded people together, some who are high performers and some who aren't high performers, but want to be that or on the cusp of doing that. And we put them in together for a weekend where we have multiple workouts, multiple seminars. The ethos of our brand is that we believe everyone is a high performer.
And it goes far beyond fitness. You mentioned that David guy. Give a little backstory on him, because I follow him on Instagram.
Oh, man.
He was in the Army or Navy at one point.
He's a Navy SEAL, yeah. And he's someone who lost 300 pounds, someone who was bullied, someone who dealt with a lot of racism, someone who dealt with a broken home and his mother being abused, and just a very, very horrific childhood. And he basically just gave up on life. And he got up to like 300 pounds, lost all that weight, and became a Navy SEAL. And he had such adversity in becoming a Navy SEAL. And it's crazy. And we trained with him. We ran 6 miles with him. We did 1,700 jumping jacks, 800 push-ups over that period of time. And it's just his mindset. He always says it's callous the mind. He talks about that all the time. He's just like, my brain and my mind is so strong that I can accomplish anything. The biggest lesson that I've learned from the community and the summits and everything is that, you know, exactly what we just said about David, right? That what happens to you really doesn't define you. It's really what you do with that after, which will make you who you really are, and how you can continue to move forward. And I've heard everyone's stories, good, bad, ugly, who come to these summits. And I think they totally understand that, is not to just let it go, what has happened to you, if it's negative or whatever, but to just put it back and be able to move forward and let that define you, the progress that you're going to make as a person. With everything going on in our culture and our country, and the crisis that's currently happening, how do you think leaders should show up?
Well, I mean, I guess that's a little bit vague, given the fact that we're going through a pandemic, and also another pandemic, and the fact that, you know, I believe that there's systemic racism going on. And as far as leadership's concerned, I think I think anyone could notice that there are issues and they do need to be addressed. Understanding that it's as far as a society and giving everybody the same opportunities to be successful, it's just not being presented. And I guess we just got to ask ourselves, like, how do we want to leave this world, you know, after we're gone? And I think on a leadership standpoint, and I don't want to get political here, I think that not enough is being done in that front. And I think that some people need to really give things some thought and how they're handling things, because their voices are very loud, and they could be affecting the way people think, and eventually how this world is when we are all gone.
You have an interesting tactic for dealing with trolls. How do you develop that strategy?
I think that one thing I need to continue to work on is my ego. And as you get older, you understand that your ego can be, of course, a positive thing, but it also could be very negative. And I think wasting energy on people who are trying to bring you down and feeding into that and taking it so personal when in reality they don't know your reality isn't a good thing. So that was how I originally came about on Twitter, where I would just go at people who were coming at me. And I have, like I said, been trying to work on that and try not to take outside opinions as seriously as I should. And I think ultimately you should only take people's opinions seriously who you would take advice from. Oh, I'm gonna ask him that, eh?